All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Midnight Post. This is the brand new show hosted by myself and my partner here, Thorin. He is going to be co-hosting this series with me. This kind of going to focus on paranormal stuff, but a little bit of modern day topics as well. We're going to cover anything from time travel to serial killers. Like the whole gambit, ghost, everything. So I've done a few YouTube shows in the past. We've co-hosted things before, podcasts here and there. Edge of the Earth podcast, The Grim Times was another one of my favorites that I had done for a little while. Um, it's one of those deals where you kind of start and stop a little bit more than I would like to, but um, it kind of just depends on my interest at the time, I guess, and how much time I have, how much free time I have. So, anyway, like I said, this is my co-host Thorin. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of the what got you into all this stuff?
Well, you're the one that got me into all this, first off. But no, I am kind of skeptical about a lot of this stuff, but I'm very open-minded about it. We've done some ghost hunts together, and done one at least.
Yeah.
But also had I've got the Fright Corner podcast, which you have co-hosted with me, which we are working on getting back up and running soon.
And what's the Fright Corner about?
It's about horror movie reviews, pretty much. Pretty much anything horror gets reviewed. I got a YouTube channel, which is the Fright Corner, which I play a lot of horror games, but also has all the podcasts on there as well too that we did. I got them all on a playlist now, and I do some live streaming of some games and stuff. I really don't do commentary unless I've got somebody on there with me because I don't think people just want to hear me talk to nothing. I think you need that interaction, but yeah, that's about it. I'm a
Very
gamer
nice.
and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, so we both kind of always had this interest. Like he said, I've done a few ghost hunts in the past. He joined me for one over in Aurora, Missouri, and that was an interesting one. We caught some interesting things, but nothing super definitive. He's always been a little bit more on the skeptic side. I can sometimes accidentally let myself get swept up a little bit more than I should in certain things. But I think that's also like, and there's a whole other discussion like if you how powerful the desire to believe is, and I think that's a big thing for many religions too. If we want to go that far, is it's not so much that you do believe; it's a desire to believe. All right, so this episode is actually going to be a little bit more focused on the Dungeons and Dragons thing back in the 1980s, kind of the Satanic Panic era of time. And Thorin, he actually brought this up to me in the past. Because he's a little bit more familiar with the topic than I am. So actually, I'm going to let you lead us off here and kind of explain, what caused this whole dramatic outbreak in the first place.
well, there's a lot of things. I'm a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan. I actually have a group that I play with weekly still that we've just started back up, but which is where my name comes from. It's one of my characters. But but the whole idea of the Dungeons and Dragons, of course, we know now it has a signifies like, well, you're a nerd if you play it or something like that. I mean, that's this potency it has now. But yet back in the day when it first came out, it was it had quite a few people that were interested in it, which was good. They had a few, but then in '79 there was a kid that went missing from Michigan State University. Family called the private investigator from Texas, this William Deere, to go kind of check it out and see if they could find their boy. And they kept looking, but they said the one thing they seen said, oh, they're into this Dungeons and Dragons, which is nothing but decapitating people and satanic rites and rituals. All of a sudden, they thought the kid was dead or something, and they never found him. A few days later, somebody calls and says, yeah, well, he's right here. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him. He was just gone. Unfortunately, years later, he did commit suicide. But after that, it was like a media storm. The media blew it up, as in it's like it's teaching your kids how to be Satanists, witchcraft, and devils, and they can't tell fantasy from reality anymore. Cause murder, sacrifices, and I mean, it got to the point that there's one guy that I play with that he was in California. He said he literally had to be a closet D&D player because his parents couldn't know that
Wow.
he played. I
Yeah.
mean, because he said, and of course, the kid that got him into it was a preacher kid down the road. So
Oh, the
go
irony.
figure.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the
Yeah.
whole Harry Potter thing that went on when that
Yes.
first came out. I remember our school library was trying
Oh,
to have the books banned because it
Oh,
was too crazy, too dark.
the devil is the
Yeah.
devil.
Yeah, I know. I did a little bit of reading on this subject after you brought it up to me, and I've done some of my own research. I know that if you look at the Wikipedia page, the majority of it is about the controversy around the game, which is kind of funny. But I think most of it happened back then. Like it's kind of calmed down now. It's more like it's pretty widely accepted. Like even a lot of digital
Yes.
games have spawned from that now. Like there's Neverwinter you can find on PlayStation 4 and Xbox. I think it's on Xbox. I don't know for sure, but
Well, look at
yeah.
the Elder Scrolls and all that stuff. That's
Mhm.
more or less from D&D. And of course, D&D they got their idea from Lord of the Rings because
Yeah.
they were avid readers of it, and I mean, you could tell they get well their ideas from it, but yet it helped spawn the whole generation of stuff and all kinds of games, movies. I mean, there was even movies on it and stuff. Even before these newer ones, there was some back then that were kind of based around it.
Yeah.
You could even say Goonies could be part of a Dungeons and Dragons because Dungeons and Dragons game you can have anything you want. You
Huh.
could even say the Goonies was like their own little Dungeons and Dragons. They had the enemies that were after them. They were searching for treasure and loot, all that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you could look at it that way.
That's funny. I mean, it really has kind of infiltrated the I don't know what you even call it, but I mean, like you said, it was in the ET movie, right? You were telling me off air.
Yeah, yeah. There was even it shows on ET as in '82, I guess when ET came out. There's a scene where they're sitting around the table and they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. They got all their sheets out and they've got the dividers up and stuff, and they're looking at all this and they're rolling dice and just having a blast. And that's the whole idea of it
Yeah,
is to have a blast with it.
and I know a lot of people probably even saw it in Stranger Things. I think
Yes, the
the very
very
first
first
episode, right?
episode, very first episode of the first season, they're all playing, going after the Demogorgon.
Yeah. Well, if you look back on the Wikipedia page, like the very beginning starts out, it's received negative publicity for alleged or perceived promotion of such practices as Satanism, witchcraft, suicide, pornography, and murder. During the 1980s, religious groups accused the game of encouraging sorcery and the veneration of demons. So, yeah, people were very sensitive about this sort of thing back then. I mean, was there kind of a boom in religion back then? Like, what do you think caused the whole thing?
Well, well, it wasn't. Let's see, what year did Reagan get in? Because that's when there was a huge boom in the religious
Okay, so it was one of those like,
vote and stuff. I mean, there was a huge boom with that, and I think that's where a lot of it comes from because they don't understand it. They
mm-hmm,
just see it as something evil. But
yeah,
I mean, the idea though, if you can't distinguish fantasy from reality anyway, then there's a problem
mm-hmm.
before the game was ever introduced.
Well,
So,
I mean,
I mean, when you're looking at somebody, they don't know. You're going to a fantasy world, you're role playing this character, and you're having fun. But if you can't distinguish that reality from this one, then there's other problems. It's not the game.
right, yeah, it's
There's
kind of the
something
same
else going on that
same
needs
thing
to
with
be
Grand
helped.
Theft Auto. Even like people say that Grand Theft
Oh
Auto
yeah,
makes you more violent. If anything, I think that's a safer way to let out aggression. But I mean,
it,
you
it truly
mentioned
is.
you mentioned it being based off of Lord of the Rings originally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so and Tolkien's work in general, I guess. Um,
Yes.
I wonder why then Tolkien's work wasn't seen as like evil and satanic.
I really couldn't tell you. I mean, a lot of the imagery, I will admit, the imagery on there, I mean, it showed, some of the Dungeon Master books and stuff from then had looked like a demon on there or something. So that's probably, and you see dragons, and
Yeah,
dragons are automatically, they must be demons. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's
right.
not it. You don't understand.
Yeah, and I mean Tolkien had like the Balrog, right, which looks kind of demonic, but I guess nothing
Yes.
overly dark looking. So maybe
I
this was
guess.
like the people who made Dungeons and Dragons. This was like their way of making it cooler, if you will.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, it was their way. And the best part is, though, there was never really any modules to go with it until here recently. They do have modules out there that you can just follow along a story.
Okay.
But at first, they didn't include any of them because they wanted it to be your own imagination and your own story. I mean, you can throw yourself in, might be just a typical kid at school, may not necessarily bullied or anything, but it's like, yeah, I don't do a whole lot. But in this realm, maybe you're a warrior, and you're saving people. You're making choices of right and wrong and good and evil. the same stuff you face in life too.
Yeah.
You have to have the ability to communicate with people. This, you have no choice but to communicate. Everybody around that table, you have to communicate with,
And I guess
and I think it really helps.
we should probably go over exactly how the game is played so people kind of understand what we're talking
Okay.
about here. So like it's not digital, right? It's all pen and paper. You have the dungeon
It's pen and
master
paper.
who makes up the story,
Yes.
and sometimes
Yep.
it can be a custom story or a pre-made one that they provide with the
Yes.
game. And then how does it
Yeah,
work? You
there
said
is some
everyone
pre
sits
made.
around the table.
Yeah, everybody sits around a table. Let's say you're gonna make characters. There's a handbook, and I think you can buy them on Amazon for $30, but I think at most retail stores are 50. Just a nice little handbook. Okay, you're gonna make up characters. Everybody sits around, grab some dice, which in this case, I mean, you use 7 dice in the game. Um, and your biggest one is your D20, is what they call it. It's a 20-sided dice. That's your biggest dice you use. But when you're making up characters, you use just your standard 6-sided dice. You'll roll out, you get some points, you make up your character, you decide the race, the background, what class it is, whether you're a warrior, a fighter, a wizard, whatever. Any of that same trophic stuff. And after you've done that, the dungeon master kind of comes in and it's like, okay, I've got this story. Like, start out with after a weary day of travel, you run into a tavern. While you're sitting there having your ale and meal, the blacksmith bursts open the door and says, "They've taken my daughter. Will someone help?" And then it goes from there. Say, okay, now what do you do?
Okay, so
That's
and the
where
characters are
you can
kind of
form a party.
okay, right? So that's where you meet each other up and
Where
that
you would actually
makes sense.
meet each other. That's
Yeah.
just one. It used to be the way. It used to be just okay, you've traveled through the woods, the dark woods of Noria, and now you're gonna just show up in front of this dungeon. And everybody's already together. Here you go.
Okay.
Now, what's your next move?
And so in the game they already provide like the enemies that you might encounter, and they already provide the classes and
Yes.
races usually.
Oh yeah, they do, and in fact, they now have them. I think if you go to Wizards website, which they're the ones that own D&D now. The original creators of D&D have passed away. Uh, but if you go to Wizards website, they've got it to where you can get pre-generated characters even. So you can get on there like, okay, we just want, or buy the starter set for like less than $20. If there's a guide in there and there's pre-made characters, you sit down, you get Dungeon Master, you all pass out who wants to be who, and it's already made up, and you just start playing. I mean,
Okay.
they've made it very user friendly compared to what it used to be,
Yeah.
and
So
the rules are a lot easier to read. Um, Pre-generated characters are kind of nice because it does take some time to make a character. I mean, you'll probably spend one session doing that because it could take hours to do,
wow. Yeah.
depending on how far you want to get with it. Like if you're gonna have a big background, you'll be writing up a background on the character or whatever. So
Yeah. So you said it's owned by Wizards now, which is Wizards of the Coast, right? And they also own the
yes,
popular Magic card game.
Magic. Yep, they own Magic as
Okay.
well.
Yeah. So a quick little note here. This is to give you an idea of just how sensitive people were back then. So there was a lady named Patricia Pulling, and she was an anti-occult campaigner from Richmond, Virginia, the founder of Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons, codename BAD with 2 D's. This one-person advocacy group was dedicated to the elimination of Dungeons and Dragons and other such games. Pulling founded BAD in 1982 after her son Irving committed suicide. She continued her advocacy until her death in 1997. Her son had played D&D, so she filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the son's high school principal, holding him responsible for what she claimed was a D&D curse placed upon her son shortly before his death. She also filed a suit against TSR, publishers of the game at the time. Have you ever heard of a curse being placed on anyone?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. There's no curses that I've
that's
ever seen.
that's kind of an odd thing.
But
Maybe someone in the game cursed his
oh,
character, and he told his mom about it over spaghetti one night.
no, that's lovely. I
You
mean,
know?
now curses on characters, yes, in the game, but not on real people.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
uh, with that, I think that's going a little too far. I'm sorry her son committed suicide. That is horrible. I would never want to think or even will that on anybody.
Right.
But I doubt the game had anything to do with it. I'd say there's other problems there.
I think it's kind of funny that it's called Bad when there's also now there's Mad Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I think that one
Oh
might
yeah,
be a little bit more understandable
that's
or
more that's
reasonable.
more understandable.
Yeah.
I mean, because now, okay, like we talked about a little bit earlier, I'm going to kind of go with this a little bit. We live in an age of digital technology. Look at us now; we're on the computer communicating with each other, over the internet. Um, and so many kids nowadays, they're stuck on these screens. They're playing Xbox, PlayStation, and all that, which there's nothing wrong with that. But on the other hand, they're not getting the actual human interaction like it used to be. I mean, yeah, you're interacting voiceover, but of course, the worst part is if you go play some of these games, that what you hear come out of their mouths, you don't want to hear.
Right.
I'm not I'm not no sensitive person. I could care less. But when there's a 12-year-old talking, you suck, f this, f that, screw this, it's like I don't want to hear that crap from a kid.
Hmm.
It's like you got no, they're saying that because they're behind a screen.
Right.
Part of the reason because they're not faced with you. But now
Hmm.
more people are reaching out for D&D and these Pathfinder, Starfinder, their Star Wars role playing games because it puts the kids together in a live setting. You're
Yeah.
sitting around a table, you're meeting people, you're having a good time. It gives them another sort of interaction with people.
Yeah.
I game a lot. I game a lot on online. I mean, that's no joke about that. But I also enjoy going to my D&D session because it's a little bit different. You're sitting around, you might have a few drinks and a few snacks or whatever, but you're having a good time playing out this story as you go.
Right.
It's just a whole different interaction of people. And I think now that it helps, as in a lot of these ones, to put down the screen game, put down the phone. Let's go here and sit around a table and forget all that crap.
Hmm.
And let's just do this.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I think even with the technological boom, board games and tabletop stuff is almost more popular than ever. Really, I mean, it's all kind of making a
Oh
comeback
yeah,
right now, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I like to have them both hand in hand. I don't
yeah.
necessarily
Oh, I know. What you
want it
mean?
all to
In
go to.
fact, there's even a website. I think it's called Roll20. Go on there and you can play D&D with people online. I mean, it's got all the screens and stuff, so you're getting some human interaction in a way. But
Wow.
it gives you a chance to play D&D online too. I mean, you can get on there and find a party or something like, oh, looking for 4 people. You can join up and you might meet some new people, and you've got your screens out, and
Wow. Yeah,
you
that's
get a
pretty cool.
little bit of face-to-face interaction. It's not quite the same as in person, but it's really close.
Yeah. So, just another noteworthy thing here. Apparently, the controversy led TSR to remove references to demons, devils, and other potentially controversial supernatural monsters from the second edition of D&D, published in
Mm-hmm.
1989. These terms were replaced by references to Tenari and Batetsu. I don't know if I'm saying those correctly. Many of these exclusions were returned to the second edition in the late 1990s, appearing again in releases such as Guide to Hell. In 2000, the
Yeah,
third
there you
edition
go.
of the game was addressed demonology and demonolatry far more
Yeah,
explicitly than materials from previous editions. However, relations and interactions with these creatures are explicitly said to be evil. So at least they're kind of
yes.
distinguishing more
They're
extreme
distinguishing
manuals.
these.
Right.
These are evil. I mean, they also have. I mean, like in the fifth edition here that we're on now. If you
Mm-hmm.
play it, you can still go back and play fourth edition, third edition. I played some third edition when I was younger, and then I was out of it for a long time until here recently. And I always wanted
Okay.
to get back into it, but but no, these. But now, I mean, if you look in the back or if you get the Monsters Guide to fifth edition, they've got angels and demons listed both. So they
Huh.
got both sides of it
Interesting.
in there, which is interesting. I mean, I never thought I'd see that, but
Yeah, it says there are more extreme manuals, specifically the Book of Vile Darkness and the Book of Exalted Deeds,
mm-hmm.
and they bear a for mature audiences only label. So like it's like an explicit lyrics warning almost for music if
Yeah,
you want to
pretty
quote that.
much.
Huh. I mean, at least, yeah, they're kind of distinguishing. This one might not be for the 10-year-olds. This one's probably for the adults.
For the
Anyway,
older adults and
yeah,
stuff that still get around and play.
right. And I mean, it was even plagued by rumors in the 1980s, apparently, of players having psychological problems related to the game. These include claims that players have difficulty separating fantasy and reality, even leading to schizophrenia and suicide. Now, I'm kind of with you. If you can't distinguish the two, um, on its own, you've got some issues going on. So, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Kind of in closure here. I don't really see that there's any problem with the game. I think it's just kind of a ridiculous notion and something kind of fun to talk about here. I mean, fun fact: it's not even just the United States that is an area where this is super popular. Like in Israel, for example, Israel has paid people working after school programs as dungeon masters, and the dungeon master being the guy who like makes up the story and everything for the rest of the people to follow.
Yes.
So,
Oh
arguably the one
yes.
with the most responsibility, right?
Yes. If you're a DM, you have the most responsibility, and you have to think fast and on your feet because things don't always go the way you want them to. So,
Yeah, lots of possibilities, and I think yeah,
absolutely.
you would probably recommend that most people look into D&D, right?
I do. I really think you should, especially if you got kids. My son is just now 12 years old, and he's really wanting to get into it. So we've kind of ruled up some characters, and he's got some other friends that are his age that are wanting to. So we're putting one together for them, especially to do with the kids to get them started out now.
Yeah.
And then eventually they'll be doing their own before long. They won't even need us. Won't even need us parents that are sitting around trying to help them. They ain't gonna need us before long to do it. But
How?
at first it's kind of nice because you also get this interaction with your kids.
Yeah, right.
He pass something on that's going to be generational for him.
I can only imagine the situations like your son's in trouble, his character's in trouble, and you come in to save him, and he's like, "No, Dad, I got this. Leave me alone. Get off my
Yeah,
back." Yeah.
this could
How
be interesting.
young do you think is the youngest that you would recommend to have to play it? Like how cognitive do they need to be? Maybe at least
I
10?
would say I think 10. I know the box says what's it say up here? I think it says 12 or older. I believe is what it says, but I think if you're about 10, you can do it. So
Yeah, at least comprehend some of what's happening, at least.
I think so because there is some themes in there. You need to have some ideas of how to negotiate, how to talk with people. You definitely have to have those communication skills
Yeah,
because
right.
you're running into all kinds of merchants and stuff, and you got to learn some bargaining because they're saying, no, I ain't doing that.
Kind of bargaining
I
for
mean,
better prices and stuff. Is that something you
better
can do?
price. Yep, you can do that. You can bargain for better prices and stuff.
Wow, that's funny.
It's hard to delve into all the rules and stuff you can do because it just takes so long because there's
Yeah,
just hours and hours of material.
yeah, right. All right, well, I think this pretty much wraps up our first episode of the Midnight Post. And I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you maybe learned a little bit about some topics that you never really thought about before. And yeah, so thank you all for watching. And for Thorin, I am Dark on Veil, and we will see you in the next episode.